Hey, this is Jonathan Pines. I'm here on the floor of the Summer NAMM 2017 show in Nashville. I want to give a big shout out to our good friends at Mix Better Now. This is our first time on Mix Better Now, and we're pretty pleased to be here and to get a chance to show you guys some of the cool stuff we make. First thing I'm going to show, Pete is an awesome dude. We had a nice little party last night. We had a little fun. We don't have any video footage of that. Sorry, guys.
No footage.
But what we do have here are the Rupert Neve Designs shelfer channels. And I'll walk you guys through what this does, and I'll hold this to make it a little easier on Pete. So here we have a DI, and it's a real DI, meaning it actually hits the transformer, it's actually high impedance, it won't load your instrument, and it's very dynamic. It's an outgrowth of what went into the R&DI, which is one of our most popular pieces, and it has such handy things as a through, who would ever need that with your bass amp, and a ground lift. Then we have Rupert's first transformer gain mic preamp in over 35 years. So that means the first 15 dB of the gain come from the transformer, which means it's very vibey. That means you're always driving the sound and the tone of the transformer right off the bat. It's Class A because it's Rupert Neve. It runs on 48 volts. I don't mean 48 volts for the phantom power. I mean it runs on 48 volts. So super high power, very wide bandwidth, cool design, 72 dB of gain, enough gain to do anything you need. There's a high-pass filter. It's sweepable. You can actually send the high-pass filter into the side chain of the compressor as well. Choose what point you want that. The reason you want to do that is if you want to stop your compressor from pumping in time with bass, bring the high-pass filter up. Sorry, bring the high-pass filter up. Send it to the side chain. Then that means that the compressor doesn't actually see the low-frequency stuff triggering it. It's more mid-frequency and high-frequency stuff, and you know how handy that is. You get that going on. Next up, we have a 3-band inductor EQ. Why is an inductor? Why am I talking about an inductor? Inductor is half a transformer. So it's a coil with wire wrapped around it, which means that, like a transformer, it interacts with what happens before the circuitry and after the circuitry. So in other words, instead of being a steady state, the way it's driven, the way it interacts between the different bands determine its tone. So that's why you end up with all the classic inductor EQs have a lot of girth, sound, tone, and energy. This one's modeled off of Rupert's famous 1064 EQ in the low end, 1073 in the mid band, and then more of a hybrid activity in the high band. So basically you have big, deep, warm low end. You have that mid-range forwardness that a 1073 is actually known for. Then on the top you have more of an air band or more an open sound available. Then we have Rupert's first diode bridge compressor in, again, almost 40 years. Since the famed 2254E and 33609, this is his first diode bridge design since then. So why is a diode bridge compressor cool? How is it different from, say, a FET compressor or a VCA compressor? Okay, a diode bridge compressor, when it starts to approach, like no compression at all, when it just starts to approach an input levels of approximately plus 18 to plus 20, starts to saturate with low frequency harmonics on its own. So in other words, from 400 hertz down to subsonics, it starts to soak low frequency harmonics just as the level comes up on it. So then when you kick in the diode bridge itself, which has another set of harmonics in it, and these are very unique because they're 4 diodes, it's a full rectifier diode bridge. And what's also really unusual about this compared to the older designs is it'll go way faster. This will go under 1 millisecond attack times,
really? Which
is insanely fast for a diode bridge. Usually you see 50 or 100 millisecond attack times. You don't see stuff that's that rapid happening. So it's very flexible. It's almost 20 dB quieter than his classic designs, but it also has complex attack and release. So in the mid position, you actually have a slow attack and a fast release. Diode bridge compressors are renowned for the way they sound on bass, vocals, snare drum, kick drum. That's what you see a 2254E on most of the time, and that great tone.
Absolutely.
So this is Rupert's first time updating this, literally since the early 70s.
Yeah.
Other fun things here: parallel compression built in. Who doesn't want that?
That's an amazing feature. Yeah.
And particularly with a very vibey or potentially very aggressive compressor like a diode bridge, you want to be able to dial a little bit back and let some things through. The last thing we have here are silk red and silk blue. Okay, what is silk? Silk is a way to saturate the output sound or the output transformer, irrespective of level. One of the things that people love vintage Neve modules for is the fact you set it up for the right amount of gain, you click in, say, 30, 40 dB of gain, then you go 2 clicks past, so you're hitting it 12 dB harder. That's banging the output transformer. That is the sound of a vintage Neve at work. That's what people look for in that sound. The problem with that is in the modern age, when we're using A to D converters, you can't go 12 dB over. You're in the red. You can't get that sound. So that's why people try and devise pads, all these other weird things to do there.
Okay.
This is a way to saturate the transformer irrespective of its output level. And it has 2 different harmonics spectra. One is silk red, which again is more along the lines of the spectra of a Neve 1073, so mid-range oriented harmonics, and you can really hear those kick on. And then silk blue, which is low frequency harmonics. And you can dial the amount down from probably somewhere maybe around 0.25% to up to almost 5%. So you can really drive these suckers. And that's a great tool for not only deciding how you want your overdrive to sound, what the frequency spectra of it is, and the amount of it. And it's not dependent, so if somebody kind of plays a soft part, then it has none of it on a classic module, and then when they play hard, it has too much of it. This has it constant.
Let me ask you a question. Do you find most of your users putting this on their 2-bus, or pretty much using it on everything, or?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's important to your users is to have a piece that you can do a lot with. In other words, most people, unless you're in a huge studio, you can't afford to have a piece that does one trick anymore.
Sure.
So people love these for tracking vocals, guitars, kick and snare, those kind of things. But it also does great duty on the mix bus.
Right.
Particularly because you have the silk and because you can use the parallel compression and use parallel compression in your mix.
Okay.
We got one very cool thing on the back side. We have the regular main level output, which is plus 26 dBm. That's awesome, but a lot of gear these days can't handle that much level. So we have a -6 output, which outputs at plus 20 dBm. Why is that cool? It's 2 taps on the transformer, which means if you have, say, an Apollo or, say, an Antelope interface, well, they only output plus 22 dBm.
Okay.
So this way you can drive again. You can saturate the output
Okay.
at a lower level, and you're not killing it.
Yeah.
They're both hooked up at the same time, so you can send one as a clean path and one as a saturated path too.
Okay. That's so
Which is
cool.
pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What's neat about SE Electronics is that these are mics made the old school way. They're handmade, they're hand tensions, they have transformers, they have Class A electronics. They're not glued and stamped, they're actually tuned. Each microphone is listened to and tuned for the proper spectrum. They also really don't feature that sort of really common thing right now of being super bright between 5 and 10K. They're very linear in that region. They allow you to make your choices about the way things sound instead of being, you know, that brightness will sound kind of neat initially, but you start putting 5 or 6 tracks together, just kind of like a nail to your head.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we don't like that.
Yeah.
We're going to show you something brand new from SE Electronics. This is the SE8, small capsule condenser microphone. You can see on the back that it has a 20 dB and a 10 dB pad and an 80 hertz and a 160 hertz high pass filter. This is a Class A microphone, small capsule, innovative new backplate design. You want to use this on overheads, you want to use this on acoustic guitar, mandolin, cello, of course acoustic piano, stereo recording, and stereo pianos.
Right.
Now, this is one of the quietest small capsule condensers on the planet. It's got a self-noise of 13 dB. That's extremely loud noise. And it'll take a max of 159 dB SBL. So you go from the snare drum to the quietest harp or the quietest thing you'd ever record. Yep. We're really proud of the fit and finish of this product. We think that it really has an elegance and feel, not only in the sound, but the way it looks and feels beyond its price point.
Yeah, it's great. Love the filters and the pads and stuff. It's great.
This has a list price of $299, a stereo pair list for $599, which means the street price on the stereo pair is under $500.
Can't beat that.
I know.
Really
Stereo
can't.
pair ships with, of course, clips, a nice stereo bar, a cool case, and windscreens.
That sounds like that would be an amazing entry-level pair of small diaphragm condensers for the home studio. guy. You
well,
know.
we think it's important that when you buy your first pair of microphones, you keep those all your life.
Absolutely.
Not something you're just going to discard and say, oh, I wish I had bought this, or
Yep.
now that I finally got money, I've got something I keep.
Yeah.
We think I still have some of the first microphones I ever bought,
Okay.
and I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to offer a value like this of something that somebody's going to use their entire life and use it on every session that they do.
Right.
And we feel that same way about the entire line. This is a very, very cool ribbon.
I've used one of these, and I've got to say, this is probably one of the best ribbon mics, bar none, that I've ever heard or used. Forget about the price point, all that stuff, ever. This is an amazing mic. I'll let you tell a little bit about it, but it sounds fantastic.
This is the SE Electronics VR mic. What's cool about this mic, among other things, is it's dead flat from 20 hertz to 18K. Unlike most ribbons, it doesn't roll off in the high end. It's actually very, very linear, almost ruler flat in that area. It also takes a ton of SPL. It'll take 135 dB SPL, which means you can put it on drums, you can put it on guitars. It's not going to fold up, it's not going to give up.
Yeah.
It's got this kind of innovative design with these holes in the front, these ports on the side, and a neat patent-pendant ribbon folding structure. That's how it's linear. It doesn't roll off. It's not EQ, it's not peaking the resonance, it's not doing any tricks. It's actually acoustically linear.
Amazing, that's cool.
There's a big brother to this, which is called the VR2, which is active. So VR1, VR2, the only difference, they both overload at 135. The only difference is the active electronics, which means that it's load independent. It also has 20 dB more gain. So if you're doing bluegrass, for example, or you want to use it on background vocals, or you want to use it on piano, the extra gain really helps, because then you can use it with any interface or any mic rig.
Yeah.
This is $399 street price, and the active version is $499. Awesome reach, awesome sounding. We have these with people all over the place.
Yep.
My Morning Jacket uses these for overheads and on guitar cabinets.
Okay.
Linkin Park uses this. Justin Timberlake uses this. Madonna. All kinds of people.
Yep.
We think it's a great mic, and we feel it's very unusual. And you've heard it.
It is amazing. I love it. I want to definitely add at least a pair to my arsenal for sure.
Excellent.
Can we take a peek at what's this guy right here?
Okay. This looks a little bit like a microphone you've seen before.
Sure.
The other one that was here actually went over to a session at Ocean Way today. Somebody came to
Okay.
borrow it. This is the T2, and its cousin is the 4400.
Mm-hmm.
The idea behind this is, frankly, if you look at everything we make, these really aren't copies of things. They don't look like 47s or 87s. We're not trying to make something that looks like
Right, yeah.
We set out with a 4400 literally to make a pre-1981 414.
Okay.
So that same classic sound, transformer-based, hand tension, hand screwed together capsule, Class A electronics, that's our update to it. A gentle peak at 11K of about a dB and a quarter, very linear in the 5 to 10K range.
Yeah.
This is its cousin, the 4400, which is the exact same microphone but has a titanium capsule.
Oh wow,
And
okay.
as we've talked about before, titanium is a very stiff and rigid metal.
Sure.
Gold is rather malleable, so gold has a tendency to have a little bit softer transient response, whereas titanium is very stiff, moves very much in a piston. So even though these both in an anechoic chamber measure dead flat next to each other at the same curve, they both have that slight peak at 11K. But this one in use feels a little brighter and a little more forward because it's that much more transient.
Yeah, that looks great.
It's $499.
How do you beat that? Damn.
Here's the RNDI. Okay, this is a very cool device. Most of the time you see a pad on a DI, be able to take a lot of level. Why do you want a lot of level? Say you've got a Nord synthesizer, very cool synth. You've got that in the mono mode, stacked up with some resonance. You can put out plus 15 dBm on that.
Sure.
All right, this with no pad will take plus 21.5 dB on the input side, which means you can take the full output of an Apollo or an Antelope interface and run it straight in here, which is intense.
That is.
When you hit the speaker mode, which is right here, it'll take 1,000 watts. Now, why would you want 1,000 watts? Okay, well, what does an 800 put out? 800 watts. What does a big SVT stack put out?
Yeah, right.
A lot of level.
Yeah, yeah.
So that means you can actually put it between your speaker and your amplifier.
That's crazy.
And get the sound in tone. So your whole pedal loop, everything looped in there, which is very cool. This is a very high impedance DI. So what that means is it doesn't load the tone. If you're using a single coil, it doesn't load down that sound. It's going to be a little less apparent on, obviously, on an active DI because that's more load, an active bass, a little more load dependent. But anytime you're using a single coil instrument, the impedance of the DI is very critical. You want a very high input impedance, something over 2 mega ohms, because it won't load down or change the sound of your instrument at that point in time. It's also very transient. We've run head-to-head tests with this against almost every DI in the industry, and you'll look, the same person playing the same level, you'll actually see the peaks and dips a little bit higher and lower on Pro Tools because it's that transient. It also has a really massive low-frequency harmonic structure, so it's big, it's transient, it's warm, it's really a great piece. It's also $269, so it's not unobtainable.
That's a no-brainer for me, for sure. Yeah, cool.
So the other thing that you looked at a little bit earlier, was asking me about, is here's a cool headphone amp. So a lot of the Mix Better Now clients, your customers, guys who watch this blog, you're working at home. You don't have a perfect studio. You don't have treatment everywhere. What does that make you do? Mix on headphones.
Sorry, John.
Okay. What does that make you want to do? Mix on headphones. Okay. So when you're mixing on headphones, it's actually important that you have a good sounding headphone amp. So we at Rupert Neve Designs, of course, designed this, the RNHP. So the RNHP has 3 inputs on it. It has combo jacks that are, of course, TRS and XLR for your plus 24 dBm and above signal. It's got RCA jacks at -10 for your lower level stuff. Then it's also got a 3.5 millimeter jack for iPhones, iPod, your computer, whatever. Now, these aren't just 3 jacks switched between one input. They're actually impedance compensated and level compensated for each device. So in other words, they're matched specifically to each device. So that means when you plug your iPhone in, you're going to go, wow, I've never heard it sound like that.
That's important, yeah.
It's also a Class A headphone amp with a ton of power, which means if you're using higher impedance headphones, which are some of them are really popular, great headphones, Sennheiser 650s, 600s, classics in the industry, they're not the easiest headphones to drive. You need to be able to put out enough output current to drive them loud. These will drive them to painful levels. Also, they're very revealing. So when if you're in an apartment, if you're in an urban environment, and you're trying to get a mix, what you listen to on your headphones is really your window into what your mix is going to sound like. So we suggest a tool like this. We think it's a great option for people.
Fantastic.
A little over $500. It's a great piece. It's available from your local dealer, and will help you mix better now.
There you go. All right, so I just want to give a big thanks to Jonathan here at the Neve booth. Thank you so much for taking the time. I can't say thanks enough. Such a great little tour of the gear. I hope you guys all enjoyed that. Gonna say thanks again. All right. Awesome. This is Pete with MixBetterNow.com, and we will catch you guys later.